Hey, so welcome to the Spry podcast. Why don't you join us as we cover some amazing topics around financial planning? The goal is to simplify and empower you as a client to build multi-generational wealth. So come join the journey. Hey, so welcome to the Spry podcast. This is my partner, Travis Hawkins. This is Grant Slevin. We co-founders of Spry Financial Planning.
Yep.
And we're really excited because why, Trav? Why are we really excited?
Because we are starting a podcast.
We are starting a podcast. And remember, we want to simplify it for you guys. We want to empower you guys to build multi-generational wealth. And so what we want to take today and what we want to try and talk about is hot topics as we go in these podcasts. But today is a really, really hot topic. And it's coming in when?
1st of September.
1st of September. It's called the two-pot system. And Trav, what is potting with the two-pot system? So I'm just going to roll into a question for you very quickly. This two-pot system, everyone's talking about it. Give us the overview of it. Give us some of the pros, some of the negatives. Just what is your feeling about it? How did it come about?
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah, I think maybe everyone's got a bit of two-pot fatigue. We've been hearing a lot about it, reading a lot about it, been bombarded with two-pot information. But I think for us, what we want to do today is just to digest that. So I think maybe I can start off by saying two-pot, it's been a long time coming. Maybe some insight into what we've been told as an industry, why it's come about. Essentially, I understand it from a behavioral perspective. But there are pros and cons, just like anything. So there's the benefit to it. Someone who's maybe got 2 million rand in their retirement annuity or their pension fund, as an example, and suddenly can't make it through the month for X amount of months.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's the benefit in that person having?
Well, we saw that in COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that person's going to be struggling. So I can understand, I can relate to that in the sense that why have that and you can't even pay your bills? So two pots come about, and two pots going to, I wouldn't say eliminate that problem, because I would argue that's a behavioral issue or an area to discuss, but I would say it would mitigate a lot of the concerns there. So I like it from that point of view. The client or the investor is going to have access to their funds, limited access, which again in my mind's a positive. But then also, predominantly protecting their ability to grow their capital over time for their retirement. So two-pot, what's going to happen essentially? You happy for me to just jump in?
Go for it, eh? I think so. I think what you were saying earlier, like we've been in these podcasts, we've been in these Google Meets. I've personally done 2 presentations at some of the funds, and it is fatigued. And I would love to just just go into like the why, maybe the psychology of like what is, and we've engaged with people, which has been amazing. And so like, tell us why. What is like the psychology behind it? I know you've said now with the savings portion, but is it a good thing?
It's a difficult one. I think each individual is going to have to look at their circumstance and they can decide whether it's a good or a bad thing. So as an example, you've got someone who basically can't make it through to the end of the month or 2 months or whatever the case may be, but they've got 1 million rand or 500,000 or whatever in their retirement annuity, their pension fund at work. Now what's happening is, we've seen it, is guys are resigning. So if they resign, they leave their employers just so they can access some of their pension fund money. One, they're getting taxed to the hills on that.
Correct.
Okay. Both now and then obviously, later on when they actually retire. So that's a negative for them. And sadly, the guys aren't aware of that.
No.
I would argue. They're not fully aware of the consequences of that.
100%.
So in that situation, I think you're going to definitely reduce that scenario happening. In my mind, that's a good thing. My concern, though, if I'm honest, is guys accessing their funds, and I know we'll chat into how much I can access and all of that later, but I'm concerned about clients or employees accessing their funds for something that's maybe not necessary.
Yeah. We were chatting about it just now before we started here. It's like, what is an emergency?
Yeah.
Emergency can be different. Yeah. Flat screen TV for the wall can be an emergency for some people.
If the World Cup's around the
corner. Well, exactly,
joking.
So that it's always, like you're saying, it's always a hard thing. So maybe, what would you describe with what do you, in your opinion, what is an emergency?
Yeah, I think it could be different to any of us. if I'm honest
100%.
with you. But I think like just your classic kind of maybe stereotypical examples would be obviously anything that's a medical expense, something that needs to be, let's take for example, something that is subjective, but
Yep.
if your child is sick,
Yep.
and we'll move mountains for our family. So now if your child is sick and you've got funds in there,
Yeah.
you're not going to think twice about it,
Yeah.
if we're honest with ourselves. So an emergency, I would say anything, a medical emergency, where it has to be accessed, things where you just have to make it through the month, for example, not to make it through because you're spending too much on consumer goods, or you're spending too much on eating out, or whatever the case may be. Or it's yes, we all love the Springboks dearly, but having to make it to Ellis Park to watch Springboks versus New Zealand.
I'm going this weekend. Yeah, fantastic.
Before two-pot, but I mean, I would argue like that's not an emergency.
100%.
Okay, it's definitely important.
Yeah.
But we
No,
joke.
it is, and I like what you're saying, because often we've spoken about what is an emergency fund. We plan for that with our clients, so
totally separate objective, right?
total separate objective. But what I found, and we mentioned just now, is in COVID that people didn't plan. They didn't have an emergency fund. And so I had a few calls in COVID to say, how can I access my retirement? You couldn't, whereas now it is giving that opportunity. But what you're trying to say is just think carefully. Speak to a financial advisor, speak to someone who's going to help you through that motion and make a good decision in terms of that.
Yeah. So I think the big thing there is like what you want to do as well is through any big financial decision is just think through it slowly.
So good.
Get opinions from other people on that as an example, and then just maybe dwell on it for a day or two. The systems are going to be set up. The systems, from what we understand, are going to be, a lot of them you're going to have to deal directly with the service provider for them to be able to manage that whole process, just within terms of SARS and all those wonderful things. So I think
So I think maybe like just jumping into the three different, I mean, what you're going to jump into that, which is going to be absolutely sensational, is, they call it the two-pot system, but maybe give us some insight, and let's jump first into I know we've spoken about it now, but let's just jump into like the high level overview, but the nitty gritty of how it's going to happen with the 1/3 or the savings component. What is, actually, in fact, let's jump into the vested option first. This is where the third pot comes in, and you can jump in here. But how is this? So people have got an RA, I mean a pension. They contribute to their pension fund or their provident fund. They're waking up on the 1st of September, and they're like, okay, what's going to happen with what I've got?
Yeah. And I think 1 September, the guys are going to have some phone calls, if I'm honest. Or 2 September, it depends when the first is. But Spring Day is going to be a busy day, I think, for a lot of service providers. But what's going to happen, you're right about the two-pot, three-pot, the potjie pot. I mean, it's the way 91 went, and I know we're not trying to promote guys here, but the way that they depicted it, I thought was brilliant. And I know we've got all our different types of pot. We are a melting pot. There's too many puns here. But I think the what's going to happen is up until now and up until the 31st of August this year, what's going to happen is you have your one pot, okay? And then on the early morning of the 1st of September, there's going to be a portion taken out of that pot.
Yeah.
And that is going to get put into your savings component, okay?
Yes.
So you've got your portion up until now, end of 31st of August 2024, that is going to be referred to as your vested component.
Yes.
Okay. So think about it. That's one pot. Okay. Your vested component, they're going to take a maximum. It's going to happen in the background.
Yes.
So you don't have to choose, or you don't have to say, okay, yes, take 10% or take 5%. Okay. There's no. It's the same for everyone, as you know. So what's going to happen in the background, automatically, there's going to be a maximum of 10% or 30,000, whichever cap is reached first, is going to be essentially withdrawn or transferred out of your current vested component, and it is going to go into your savings pot. Okay. And that savings pot is going to sit there, and it's going to grow, and future contributions are going to go into it. okay, which we'll get to later, I think. But your vested component, that would be essentially grandfathered.
Yes.
If I can put it that
Yes.
way.
Great word.
It's just going to
Yeah.
sit there,
Yeah.
and it's still going to grow.
Yeah.
Okay, you're still going to be invested into the
Yeah.
market, but any future contributions that the employee or the individual, if it's an RA,
Yeah.
any future contributions won't go into that vested component.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's important to know that the same rules apply to that
Yes.
vested portion, that it's going to grow in that portfolio, but also you've got the accessibility of it. If you are moving, if you
In the
need,
savings component.
how those rules apply now,
Yeah.
which is a
Oh yes, and from a preservation. and
from
all
a
those
preservation and
ones.
stuff that will still apply to that to withdraw that.
So
that capital.
those rules are completely protected and will continue. But yeah, so let's if we look at an example, someone who's contributing, for argument's sake, 10,000 rand a month. Okay, traditionally now what happens is that individual puts 10,000 rand away into their pension fund or into their RA. The whole 10,000 goes in.
Yeah.
There's no split here, some for you, some for me, and all those wonderful things. But now what's going to happen is essentially your 10,000 is going to be debited off of your account, or it's going to reflect on your pay slip, or however your situation happens. And 1/3 of that is going to go into your savings component.
Yes.
And the other 2/3 is going to go into your retirement component. Okay. So I know when you look at your statement, depends on the service provider,
Yes,
right? I don't know, we've had lots of discussions with different service providers.
What is it going to look like?
Yeah.
Essentially, no one knows, but it's
So we're with you on this one.
yeah,
So yeah, some of the guys we've got insight, right?
absolutely.
Others we don't.
Yeah.
So we'll
Just
see.
important, quick thinking. What I was thinking while you were talking about the
Sorry,
1/3,
I was talking a
2/3.
lot, yeah.
No. It's absolutely sensational. I'm loving this because I'm learning here as we go. But it's important to know that the example you used of the 10,000 and the split is also important because I did a presentation at one of the guys we look after. And what people didn't realize when we use the example of 10,000, remember, it's not, you might, on your pension provident fund, you might have risk benefits that come off. So, so essentially when you think, this is what I'm contributing, know that you might wake up on the 1st of September and think, you do the maths and it's like, hey, that's not right. Why is that not right? It's not split up. So don't give us a phone call or phone a service provider, because there are risk benefits that you're contributing to, which will come off first. And then, so some people thought, hey, this is what it is. But remember, you're having a percentage. That percentage is now going into. So just check before you pick up the phone. And it's one of the things the guys mentioned. I was like, it's actually a really good point. You've got risk benefits that come off as well.
Well, I think what I would maybe if we just speaking candidly and openly, I think this is also, I mean, we've been in the industry for a long time now.
Collectively 13, 12 years or whatever.
Yeah, no, more than collect. That's yours. You 13 years.
Yes.
Just aged well.
Yeah.
But so I think I think what we've learned over time, right, is that legislation, product changes, all of these sorts of things, the expectation is X.
Yes.
The reality is sometimes different. So all I would just say is, listen, these are the rules that are going to be put in place. They are going to be implemented 1 September. I mean, it was a tight deadline. So credit to the service provider. I know some of the guys have spent hundreds of millions of rands on obviously creating the IT, but all the systems. But I think so what's going to happen is, what I would just say is, maybe all of us can be a little bit patient in those first couple weeks. Clients, us, administrators of funds, the HR. I mean, HR in the respective companies, they're going to be, I think they're going to be busy.
No, absolutely.
Because also the environment we're in there, right, Granty?
Yeah. No, definitely.
The economic environment.
So interest rates are high. There's a lot of stuff that
guys are feeling the pressure, right?
Yeah.
That's the honest truth about it.
Absolutely.
So I think, what I would just try and temper expectations would be to say, maybe just everyone take it easy in the first couple of weeks and have a bit more grace in that situation. And if guys need to make withdrawals and want to make withdrawals, and yes, it's definitely going to happen. No one's going to stop you from doing that, but maybe it's not going to be as efficient as what it will be in 6 months' time once everyone's figured it out. Also, the one thing that a few of the guys mentioned to us was around SARS side,
Yes. Yeah, I was
tax
going to
directives.
say that must be, yeah. I mean, we sometimes when you're doing Section 14 or those kind of things, you're waiting for SARS. I don't know if SARS, yeah, I mean, they could be.
They're going to be
but
bombarded.
the feedback we've got, as you were saying, is that they actually haven't done a trial. They haven't seen.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got suddenly 1 million withdrawals coming in, you know, it's going to be a situation.
Yeah.
But we all know SARS is very efficient at taking our
one of the
money.
best.
But
We were lucky to sit with Edward Kieswetter
Yes.
like a month ago.
yes,
Obviously, exceptional man.
Yes.
I mean, he's got 1 or 2 qualifications, so aspirational from that point of view. But yeah, let's not digress, I suppose.
no. So maybe Trav, let's just from a time's sake, but let's just jump into very very quickly just the 1/3, 2/3 component. I know we've spoken a little bit about it now, but maybe if we could just get some details around, you know, so obviously vested seed capital's coming in, you got your 1/3.
Yes.
How is if you're a person, you've identified your emergency and your need, and you're now wanting to withdraw from the 1/3.
Good question.
What does this look like?
Yeah, good question. So I think importantly, remember you got that max 10%, just to reiterate, or 30,000 that goes in, that's called your seed capital. There's no tax implication when you transfer the money from your vested component or anything like that. But if you want to access the funds from your savings component,
Yes.
not the others, the savings component pot, okay, you can access those funds. Depending on the service provider, they're going to have different minimums and so on and so forth. But you got 2,000 Rand a minimum that you would need to withdraw. That is also taxable.
Yep.
But the difference here compared to retirement regulation that we become accustomed to over time is that that's taxed at your marginal tax rate.
Yes.
So basically the tax rate that you're paying your income tax on, the PAYE side. So it's totally different to your normal retirement tax table or your retirement withdrawal tax table, pre-retirement and those sorts of things. Different now. So another spanner. So just bear that in mind, because obviously that could go up to 45%.
100%. So well, not 100%, but 45.
Yeah, 100% of that 45%.
Yes.
But yeah, so you could end up paying 45% tax on your withdrawal.
Yep.
Be aware of that. Okay.
Very massive that. I mean, that's huge.
Significant. And remember, you can only do one a year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we got to, you know, it doesn't matter how bad the emergency is second time round.
Yeah, you can't access
You can't access that.
100%.
But yeah, so then that's your savings.
Yeah. So
component.
2/3, maybe that 2/3 component. Let's call it 2/3 component for this exercise.
Retirement component. Yeah.
In your opinion, I mean, I think it's wonderful for the longevity of what actually a pension and provident fund is actually set out to do over the long term period, because that's why you're saving from one day when you actually have to retire and you need capital. Tell us about the 2/3. What are your thoughts on it? What do you think about it?
Well, firstly, we all know savings culture globally.
Yes.
Globally.
No trouble.
Abysmal, right? And that's, I don't want to, I'm not trying to attack anyone, anything. I mean, we're all human. All of us sitting in this room are human, okay? And we all are subjective by nature. But savings culture, we live in a time where instant gratification is huge. Social media influences us dramatically, and all those things. But we also got to be responsible for ourselves, I suppose. But like I said, we're all human. But why I'm bringing this up is that we tend to access funds, or we tend to not provide or make provision for the future as much as what we need to. So we know this, just from experience. You have guys who sit on two ends of the spectrum. Guys who are uber concerned about their retirement. Okay, and I'm not saying, I'm not showing preference here. I'm just stating the facts. You have guys who are super concerned about their retirement and who will sacrifice today largely so that they can have a better tomorrow, okay, and maybe too much, okay, because there can be more efficient ways to save for retirement instead of just putting your money into your pension fund or your RA. I mean, everyone's got to discuss the scenario with their financial plan and do what's right for them. But I would argue that most of us find ourselves on the other side of the spectrum, and we actually are not putting enough away for our retirement. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, like you mentioned earlier, this environment we're in as well, things are expensive.
Yeah.
So, but what ends up happening is that if you don't put enough money away, okay, we've got an issue closer to retirement.
Yes.
And then, we sit with a situation where suddenly we've got to speak to clients who are 50 years old, as an example, and that person has to now put away 50% of their salary every month. And that's
massive.
Scary.
Yeah.
And those are hard conversations to have. And we all wish we didn't have to have those conversations. But that's the reality, I suppose. But so why I'm going around and round about here is that I think the new iterations on the retirement rulings is 2/3 have to be invested into your retirement component, and they have to remain there.
Yes.
That's a big plus.
Yes.
You cannot access those pre-retirement. So I think that's a big benefit.
helpful.
So I think in the long term, that's going to help guys a lot.
Yes. Yeah. I fully agree. I think often when people are leaving a company, very seldom do they put it in a pres fund because they're paying off their cars and doing all that, and you at the end they lose out. So I think that's one of the pros to this whole thing. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But it all depends on your planning. So maybe just to end off, one last question, Trav, for you is just to say, in your opinion, do you think this is a good thing for the clients, or do you think it's a bad thing for the clients? Subjective to what
I say time will tell.
That's a great answer. No, that's a great answer.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think theoretically amazing.
Yeah.
But in real life, the real life play out of this scenario, I don't know. Overall, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I do. All these points that we've chatted about at length, I think it's a good thing if utilized correctly, if everyone is educated about it, which is going to be difficult.
I think education is massive,
Exactly. And it's also tough, though. It's tough because who falls on to educate everyone?
Yes. Absolutely.
The service providers, the HR, everyone. It isn't an easy transition to make. There's a lot of bells and whistles. There are very technical kind of elements to the decision. So maybe I would say, yes, it can be a very positive iteration on our retirement regulatory environment. But I would caveat that by saying, chat to your financial planner, chat to people around you, chat to your HR, make an informed decision and go from there.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with you. And I think so often we underestimate, and what's been helpful is just doing these presentations where you're dealing in a wide spread of people.
Yeah.
And actually the reality is people don't understand. They don't understand tax. They don't understand all this kind of thing. And what happens is that it's confusing for people. So they don't want to engage with a financial plan, or they don't want to engage because they think, hey, I don't have enough, or I don't actually understand this. But we believe that just walking through with your financial planner, understanding this to create wealth over time. And that's what we want to try and do. So,
so to your point, I always say to clients, the financial planner is not the CEO of your financial plan.
Yes.
You are, as the client.
Absolutely.
You know more than anyone else. You know your details of your financial life and your family setup and anyone. You know those day-to-day things. We don't. We obviously ask questions, we extract information, and we try and guide you as best as possible. But in terms of the day-to-day minutiae, it's impossible for us to know all of those sorts of things, but we're there to complement you.
Yeah.
And I would encourage guys, encourage everyone out there just to have the conversation. Find someone that you're completely comfortable with.
True.
Anyone.
Yeah.
Someone that you're comfortable with, have the conversation, and I don't think you'll look back.
No.
If I'm honest.
Definitely not. Not.
Cool.
Okay, so awesome. I'm going to high-five you again for our first podcast.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. So hopefully we answered what's potting in the two-pot system. Goal is to make it simple, to empower you, to build multi-generational wealth. And Trav, so lekker.
Yeah, this was fun.
We nailed it.
I hope so. Let's see. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Spry Guys podcast. It was so good to have you here with us. Don't forget, before you make any sorts of financial decisions, chat to your financial planner, He'll help you, or she will help you, make an informed and objective financial decision. We'll see you guys soon. Join the journey.